Hi, I'm James and I've been making logic puzzles for over a decade. I thought I'd talk a little bit about the many accessibility features that I've added to my games in the past and that you'll be able to enjoy in Piczle World of Puzzles. First off, the timer. Most logic puzzle games have some sort of timer, usually counting up rather than down, to show you how long it's taking you to solve this particular puzzle. I found though that, even without any pressure to complete a puzzle within a certain time, simply having the timer there will be enough for some puzzlers, including myself, to feel some pressure. In Piczle Cross Adventure, I added an option to just turn off the timer. Without any kind of clock present, you can just relax and do your puzzles at your own pace. Another thing I added in Piczle Cross Adventure was the autocomplete feature. Once you clear a row or a column's clues, the rest of the empty cells would automatically be filled in with X marks. This sped up the puzzle solving process immensely, and I kind of miss it in other nonogram games when they don't do this. And again in Piczle Cross Adventure, I added a measure feature. Part of the process of solving nonograms requires a lot of counting cells, so I add a little feature that you can use to drag over a series of cells to see how long a series is. This too is a feature I now sorely miss in other nonogram games that don't do something similar. In Piczle Cross Story of Seasons, I iterated a little bit on this by adding a counting of filled in cells. Sometimes you have a long series of filled cells and you need to know how long that series is. Sure, you can use the measure feature for this, or count by hand, but you could also just hold down a button and it'll tell you immediately. I found this in conjunction with the measure tool to really help me speed up the puzzling process. One terrible mistake I made in Piczle Cross Adventure was how I marked solved clues. I faded them out a little to show a particular clue was solved. However, a lot of players missed this happening and got confused when checking the puzzle against the clues. So for Piczle Cross Story of Seasons, I added some very clear animation that pops and draws the eye so that players who have chosen to have clues automatically marked are aware of when it's happening. In Piczle Cross Story of Seasons, I also added manual clue marking. By moving your cursor over the clues, you could manually mark them off as complete. However, I felt this harkened back a little too much to the old days of nonogram gaming, and when I quietly dropped that feature for Piczle Cross Rune Factory, nobody seemed to have noticed. Of course, you can still choose not to have completed clues marked at all if you so wish. For Piczle Cross Rune Factory, I also added a flood feature to the measure tool. Now when you're measuring a series of cells, you can press draw or mark to fill your entire selection, or at least the empty cells within it, in one go. One feature I came up with, and that I was proud enough of to patent, is the focus feature for nonograms. On smaller screens, big nonograms can be difficult to read, let alone control with touch input. So I devised a way to zoom in on a row or column so that it fills up more of the screen. This feature would make mobile nonograms so much easier to control, and it worked a treat on the Switch version of Piczle Cross Rune Factory. Aside from the dyslexia font from the Open Dyslexic organization, I also added a little feature to Piczle World of Puzzles I've been looking forward to for a while. If, like me, you play a variety of consoles using a variety of controllers, button placement isn't very easy to remember. Ask me now to press the Y button on any controller, and I'll have to stop and look down to find it. So I came up with the spatial button glyphs, inspired by Nintendo Switch's official D-pad glyphs. With this feature turned on, button prompts will show you where, physically, the button is related to others. No more fumbling. For color nonograms, I got some great feedback from players of Piczle Cross Rune Factory that I've addressed in Piczle World of Puzzles. Aside from a little color preview right next to your cursor, showing you what the next color down the line is, without having to refer to the side of the screen, I also added a color wheel for easy color selection. I too sometimes scroll past the color I need, and this color wheel solves that issue entirely. Of the many play features in my games, these are just some of the ones aimed at accessibility. Piczle World of Puzzles will include all of these and more based on player feedback. Some I came up with myself, others are iterations of features I wished more games would implement, and others have been around in some form or another. It's nice to see some of these features crop up in other nonogram games, and as a player, I've come to rely heavily on a few of them.